أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ليسوا سواء من أهل الكتاب أمة قائمة يتلون آيات الله آناء الليل وهم يسجدون. They are not the same. The people of the book are not all the same. Some of them are upright and they recite the words of Allah in prostration at night. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن الناس والدواب والأنعام مختلف ألوانه كذلك إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء إن الله عزيز غفور. He has also created people, beasts, and cattle of various colors. It is only those who have knowledge amongst His servants that truly fear Allah. Verily, Allah is Almighty of forgiving.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem wa ba'd. As we heard in the verses, the Quran is dealing with every category of meaning in a complex way. Many people suffer from an epidemic of binary thinking or dichotomous thinking, very simplistic, black and white kind of thinking. The first verse is talking about the people of the book, and after a long critique of what they did with their books and what some of the rabbis and some of the priests had done with the books, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they are not all the same, because there is a gray level between people who are believers and absolute followers and people who are corrupt. And some are a mixture of both, and some are not exactly like the others, and so forth. And that's why He subhanahu wa ta'ala told us about those who are upright and they recite the verse of Allah and so forth. The Quran is also giving us a lot of the diversity logic, that there are always different colors and different tongues and different cultures and different tribes and different ways of doing things. And it is giving us a lot of diversity in the meanings. And that's why the second verse that we read is talking about different colors of the people and different tongues. And that's how people of knowledge are fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are the ones who comprehend really the diversity in Allah's creation. So the binary thinking is against the law of diversity, which is one of the universal laws that Allah has made in this universe. And the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ are examples of that. There are always intersecting circles in the meanings that we deal with. Oftentimes when we think about the Quran and Sunnah, unfortunately, we think in terms of abrogation. We think in terms of something canceling the other thing. But both could be working, but under different circumstances. When we think about the gradualism that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has given us in the application of some of the rules, this gradualism in itself is part of the Quranic logic, and is part of the diversity in dealing with diverse people and how they think and who they are. If they are new to Islam, we should take them gradually. If they are people who are well-rooted in Islam, then the last of the rules apply to them, and so forth. And it is sometimes very simplistic to think in terms of certainty versus uncertainty, valid versus void. And there are different levels of certainty and different levels of validity and different levels of benefit and harm and so forth. So when we think about the meanings in terms of the contrary only, and not in terms of the gray levels between these meanings, then we produce a fiqh, as we mentioned, an understanding that is not guided by the way of thinking and the logic of the Quran. And when we build on the logic of the Quran, then we start to see the big pictures. It's like a flower. If you look at the flower in black and white only, then you will not see anything. When you look at the flower in gray levels, you start to look at how the flower is divided into leaves and petals and so on. But when you look at the colors, that's when you can see the beauty of the flower. And when you look at the colors of Islam and the colors of humanity and the colors of culture, that's how you start to see the beauty of humanity. We divide sometimes things in our lives that are not divided in binary. For example, we divide the body and the spirit. But the body and the spirit are mixed. The nafs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran is tied to the body. And yes, when we sleep, a nafs goes somewhere else, but it is still tied in the body. It is death, really, that separates a nafs or the soul from the body or the jasad. And it's very important to see the tying between these two meanings and the relationship between the material and the spiritual, between the physical and the psychological, the relationship between how people feel and how people perform in an economy or in an organization. It's very important to look at the humanity in its dimensions and not to look at people as numbers and their work only as numbers or as figures of dollars or performance and so forth. And it's very important that the binary thinking develops so that we have these ways of thinking that is more sophisticated. When we look at all issues of societies, when we look at religion and science, these are not binaries. When we look at the civil society versus the religious society, these are not contradictory. And some people say that in order to work in the civil society, you have to be irreligious, and that is not acceptable from an Islamic point of view, because all of the charity work in Islam is actually religious, and it is also civil. And all of the dealings with the state, yes, it is material, and you're trying to grow the economy according to that theory anyway, but it is also related to religion and to culture in a major way. There is no state that is void of religion, and there is no society that is void of morality, and so forth. And it's very important that our binary thinking doesn't take us to these dichotomies so that we remain guided and we remain ethical and moral. It is very important to balance the physical and the mental, as we mentioned, and it's important to understand the relationship between matter and energy. Even science now is telling us that matter and energy are one and the same on the very small quantum level of matter. And differentiating them in this dichotomy would hinder science from progressing. But if we start to break the dichotomies of matter and energy, and we think that energy is something that we can deal with when we deal with matter, then we are going to develop. Oftentimes when you think about strategies in organizations, they are dichotomous as well. And we either open the organization or close it, or we either take this strategy or that strategy. But strategies could be multiple. You could have multiple strategies, and you could work in parallel lines, and you could deal with contradictions in societies through the organization in a way that is best for the purposes of the organization. And we could partner with others without considering them to be enemies or any of that. The dichotomous thinking is a thinking that is very quick to considering people to be enemies and people to be in the black and white. You're either with us or with them, and this kind of logic. And partnerships and multiculturalism in a society where cultures cooperate and interact and learn from each other is something that is quite Islamic and quite Quranic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us different so that we learn from one another, he said. And therefore, that dichotomous thinking that we fall into sometimes is something that goes against the maqasid thinking. And we have to go beyond that in order for our thinking to be as colorful and diverse as and intelligent as it should be. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to that. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.